Okay, in this video, I'd like to take what we learned about associative arrays, right? Those key value pairs, the objects that we learned before, and use that to our advantage in our graphics library. So I'm going to go back to what a program we made in our functions section with the jumping player. So the start code should be available. You can download that. I'm going to open this up. And, whoop, wrong page. Let's get that over here. Index.html, jumping player, wonderful. I got a main.js, so I didn't use my graphics library. But the key here is I had this right arrow pressed and left arrow pressed because I needed those two variables. And when key is down, I did this. When key is up, I did this. And it would have been nice if I had a graphics library that could take care of this, just like we took care of mouses pressed in our graphics library, maybe we could take care of which key is being pressed. So I'd like to move this stuff into my graphics library. So if you have your graphics library ready to go, you should go to your libraries, mygraphics.js. I'm going to copy that and put it into, where to go? Jumping player, put it into here, and we'll go to index.html and make sure we load it. Source equals mygraphics.js. And now in order to use mygraphics.js, just hold on a second here. So yeah, to use the mygraphics.js, we have to call this init graphics with the width and the height. And then it'll add the line, stroke, triangle, all these different functions, mouse and circle, mouse and rect. It'll run those things and add that to my context. And then also this mouse is pressed, mouse X, mouse Y stuff is part of this as well. Okay, so where do I go? To main.js, and right up here I just have to go init graphics 800, 600, and I can delete this, and then the player should be fine. Move player, draw player, clear rect. Let's save this. Let's go to player here, and all of this should be okay. Yeah, the fill rect, everything looks okay. Let's run this and make sure it works. I've got this as my active window, and I've got my jumping player. Awesome. Okay, so like I said, the main focus here was I'd like to, in my graphics library, deal with all of the, I have mouse stuff. I'd like to have a section for key stuff. So the idea is I would love to have a variable called keyIsPressed, just like we have mouse is pressed. But this variable is going to be an object or an associative array. And inside of this, I would love to have something like arrow left, colon, true, or false, comma, arrow right, colon, false to start off with. Okay, so it's going to store the code, the key code, in the as the property or the key, and then the value will be either a true or a false. Okay, so let's see if I can do something with this now. If I go to main.js, I want to take this stuff, I'm going to cut and paste that into here. And we still need these event handlers, key down handler. I think here I did lib, just in case I wanted to indicate that this is the handler that's in the library. Because if someone's using our library, they might want to add their own key up handler. So we'll add lib there. That's good. And what I'd like to do now is I should be able to take this stuff here, the arrow right arrow pressed is true. I should be able to, well, we'll do a couple versions of this. One thing I could do is just go keyIsPressed, square bracket, arrow right is assigned true, because this is the key down. And on key up, I would do the same thing, except oops, I would take this and assign it to be false. Okay, and then same thing with, instead of having a separate variable for left arrow pressed, I could do the same thing, but have arrow left is assigned true, and here do the same thing, arrow left is assigned false. Okay, so we're just using that keyIsPressed object to look up its arrow right property and set it to true, look up its arrow right property and set it to false when we put the key up. Okay, so we initialize it to false, and then it'll become true and become false based on key down and key up. Let's save that. And now in here, I shouldn't need these variables because they're part of my graphics library now. And when I go to my player.js, these variables don't exist anymore, but I should now be able to check for keyIsPressed arrow right, and that will get the value true or false. And then same here, do my keyIsPressed arrow left. And if everything is done correctly, my jumping player should still work. Right and left work fine. Okay, cool. So the only advantage of what I've done so far is that I don't need that left arrow key and right arrow key pressed in my main function. It's now part of my graphics. And it's also one variable. keyIsPressed, not left key, right key. You can imagine I could also add up arrow and add whatever keys I wanted, which we'll talk about in a little bit more. The other thing I'm going to suggest here is that I don't think I need this if statement anymore. Event.code is going to be arrow right or arrow left, or anything. So what I think I could do is, couldn't I just go keyIsPressed, square bracket, event.code, right? Event.code is a string that represents that key code, right? The key name, basically. And I could say keyIsPressed event code is assigned true. And whatever key it is, not just arrow left and arrow right, whatever key it is, it'll create that in my object and add that true value to it. And then I can copy this line and do the same thing in here, and I don't need this. And we just set it to false. Okay? We still need this. Let's get rid of this now, but I still need the arrow up, because that I do want to still do for the jumping, right? I don't want to have, if that's pressed down, I just want to do when the key gets down the one time I want it to jump. Okay, let's see if that works. I think it should still works fine. To get a better picture of what's happening though, let's get rid of this console.log. And let's actually console.log keyIsPressed, the entire array. And I'll do it on key up as well. And let's start, the way I have it set up, I don't need to initialize anymore. I'll start with an empty, and this will just add it depending on what key I press. Okay, so every time I press the key down, it should print out the object or the associative array, and when I release it, it should print it out again. Okay, let's see what that does. So if I press right arrow key and hold it, and then I let go, cool. So when I hold it down, it assigns it to true, and there is, JavaScript has this default, when you hold it down, it does fire multiple events. There's a way you can stop that actually, but I don't care right now. Arrow left will now do the same thing. True, false, true, false, true, false, true, true, false, true, false for right. I can also press the space key. Notice how the space key now adds it, true and then false, true, false, true, false. So every time I add a key, it simply adds that value to this wonderful array. So this can work. You don't have to have individual variables for each key. Whatever key code, that's what is going to get added to this keyIsPressed variable. Okay, so this should be really useful in the future. You can just go keyIsPressed, square bracket, and in strings do whatever event code, and it should be either true or false depending if that key is held down, right? So for example, I could very easily change this to, if I want to move to the right, let's go key D, And if I want to move to the left, I could change this to key A, and A and D should now control, so D and A now control left and right and left do nothing. Okay, so really easy now. Key is pressed in square brackets, pass in the string of the key code that you want to test for. Okay, and a great example of this idea of this object as an associative array, where we have these keys, right? Literally keys, the key value pairs, where it's storing with this property as true, property is false. Okay, hopefully that made sense. That's it for associative arrays for now. Okay, take care, and we'll see you in the next video.